Welcome to 100 fascinating facts about ancient Rome. From mighty emperors and legendary battles to incredible engineering and daily life, we'll explore how science, strategy, and culture built one of history's greatest civilizations. Get ready to journey through 2,000 years of stories, inventions, and surprises that shaped the world we know today. Chapter 1. Rome wasn't built in a day, but it grew from a tiny settlement on 7 hills. The Tiber River gave life to early Romans, providing water, trade routes, and fertile soil. Imagine the first villagers watching their city rise slowly, stone by stone. Science confirms fertile river valleys always attract human settlement. From these humble beginnings, a civilization that would shape the world was born. Chapter 2. The Roman Republic began in 509 BC after the last king was overthrown. Romans invented checks and balances, even before modern governments existed. Consuls ruled together, and the Senate advised. It was messy and political, but effective. This system inspired modern democracy centuries later. Citizens debated loudly in public forums, shaping laws that governed millions, showing early power of civic engagement. Chapter 3. Roman roads stretched over 250,000 miles, connecting cities across Europe, Africa, and Asia. They weren't just paths. They were engineering marvels with layers of stones, sand, and cement. The science behind their durability is fascinating. The volcanic ash in Roman concrete made structures last thousands of years. These roads allowed armies to move fast, traders to prosper, and ideas to spread across continents. Chapter 4. Gladiators weren't always slaves. Some volunteered for fame, money, or honor. They trained in ludus, schools with strict routines. Science shows their bodies were like elite athletes with strong muscles and incredible endurance. Blood sport fascinated Romans, but it was also a social event. Emperors used games to control the masses, keeping citizens entertained while consolidating power. Every arena fight told a story of courage, survival, and spectacle. Chapter 5. Rome had public toilets called latrines, and they were social hubs. Romans used a sponge on a stick instead of toilet paper. Wastewater flowed into underground sewers, showing early urban engineering genius. Science confirms their sanitation reduced disease compared to other cities. Bathhouses weren't just for hygiene. They were meeting places, libraries, and gyms. Daily life in Rome blended practicality, technology, and culture, keeping citizens connected and healthy. In Chapter 6. The Colosseum could hold 50,000 spectators, yet it had a complex system of elevators and trapdoors for animals and scenery. Science marvels at its concrete and arches, which support massive weight without steel. Romans staged naval battles inside it, flooding the arena for mock sea fights. Every event combined architecture, engineering, and storytelling. The Colosseum was more than an arena. It was Rome's stage for power, spectacle, and human drama. Chapter 7. Roman aqueducts carried water over miles, supplying fountains, baths, and homes. Gravity alone moved water through precise slopes, sometimes less than a few inches per mile. Science confirms this simple engineering fed millions and allowed urban growth. Water represented wealth and control. Those who maintained aqueducts held power. Each arch and channel reflects Roman ingenuity, showing how understanding nature can shape civilization. Without aqueducts, Rome would never have thrived. Chapter 8. Roman dining was a theatrical affair. Wealthy citizens reclined on couches, eating multiple courses while slaves served. Exotic foods like peacock, dormice, and oysters dazzled guests. Science shows nutrition was uneven. Rich feasted while poor survived on bread and porridge. Wine, often watered down, flowed constantly. Banquets reinforced social status and politics. Every meal was a statement, blending gastronomy, display, and influence, showing how food shaped power and culture in Rome. Chapter 9. The Roman calendar wasn't always accurate. Julius Caesar reformed it in 45 BC, creating the Julian calendar. Leap years were added to sync with the solar year. Science explains the Earth's orbit isn't exactly 365 days, requiring adjustments. Before the reform, Romans struggled to plan agriculture, festivals, and politics. With the Julian calendar, they finally aligned human activities with nature. Timekeeping became a tool of power, organization, and civilization. Chapter 10. Roman law influenced modern legal systems. The 12 tables codified rules for citizens, covering property, crime, and family. Science of human behavior shows codified laws reduced disputes and violence. Judges interpreted laws with logic and precedent. This structure ensured fairness, though mostly for free citizens. Every trial told a story of justice, society, and negotiation. Rome's legal legacy echoes today, showing early societies could balance rules, power, and morality. Chapter 11. Rome's military was highly disciplined. Soldiers wore segmented armor called larica segmentata and marched in tight formations. Science shows their tactics minimized casualties and maximized efficiency. Legionaries trained daily, building stamina, strength, and precision. Their loyalty wasn't just to generals, it was to Rome itself. Roads, camps, and weapons reflected careful planning. Every conquest wasn't random chaos, but a result of strategy, engineering, and relentless organization that made Rome unstoppable. Chapter 12. The Roman Senate debated fiercely, with speeches that could sway entire populations. Orators like Cicero mastered rhetoric, turning words into influence. Science confirms human persuasion relies on emotion, logic, and credibility, tools Romans perfected. Decisions affected millions of lives. Senators wore togas as symbols of dignity, but their words shaped empire. Public speaking wasn't entertainment, it was power. Each debate reflected politics, personality, and strategy, shaping Rome's destiny in subtle yet decisive ways. Chapter 13. Roman medicine combined herbal remedies and surgical practices. Doctors like Galen studied anatomy from animals, applying lessons to humans. Science shows some treatments, like using honey for wounds, were effective. Romans also used tools like scalpels and bone drills, surprisingly advanced for the era. Health was tied to public infrastructure too. Clean water and sewers prevented epidemics. Medicine, engineering, and daily life intertwined, keeping cities functional and citizens relatively healthy. Chapter 14. Rome had fire brigades called vigils, protecting citizens and property. They used buckets, pumps, and hooks to fight blazes in dense urban areas. Science shows fire spreads rapidly in wooden cities, so early firefighting saved countless lives. Vigils also acted as night watchmen, maintaining order. Their presence shows Rome combined technology, planning, and organization to protect society. Every fire prevented was a story of human ingenuity, courage, and civic responsibility. Chapter 15. Roman religion blended hundreds of gods and rituals. Jupiter ruled the sky, Mars commanded war, and Vesta protected the hearth. Science shows ritual strengthens community bonds, reduces stress, and enforces norms. Temples were architectural masterpieces, combining beauty and symbolism. Priests performed ceremonies, guided citizens, and interpreted omens. Every sacrifice, prayer, and festival reinforced social order, linking the divine to daily life. Faith shaped politics, culture, and identity across centuries. Chapter 16. Romans loved entertainment beyond the Colosseum. Chariot races in Circus Maximus drew 250,000 spectators. Teams wore colors and fans shouted with passion, rivaling modern sports. Science confirms large gatherings boost social cohesion and adrenaline. Races were dangerous, with crashes, speed, and strategy captivating audiences. Beyond sport, races reflected status, politics, and city pride. Each lap told stories of risk, skill, and spectacle, showing Romans understood thrill, competition, and community centuries before modern arenas existed. Chapter 17. Roman education prepared boys for civic life. Tutors taught reading, writing, rhetoric, and Greek culture. Science highlights that early exposure to language improves cognition and memory. Wealthy children trained for public speaking, law, and administration. Schools weren't just about knowledge. They built confidence, status, and societal roles. Learning shaped identity, preparing citizens to navigate politics, debate, and leadership. Every lesson was practical, blending culture, logic, and preparation for the adult world of Rome. Chapter 18. Roman architecture amazed with arches, domes, and vaults. The Pantheon's dome remains the largest unreinforced concrete dome ever built. Science explains how weight distribution and material choice allowed stability. Buildings weren't just functional. They conveyed power, religion, and artistry. Streets, forums, and temples reflected careful urban planning. Every structure told a story of human innovation, ambition, and creativity, demonstrating that Rome merged engineering and aesthetics to impress, endure, and inspire generations. Chapter 19. The Roman army used signals like horns, flags, and runners to coordinate battles. Science confirms communication is crucial for organized action under pressure. Soldiers needed precision and timing to execute maneuvers in chaos. Discipline, training, and strategy made them superior to many enemies. Every advance, retreat, or flanking move relied on clear instructions. Battles weren't random. They were orchestrated with skill and intelligence, showing Rome's combination of human coordination, technology, and tactical genius. Chapter 20. Roman currency standardized trade across the empire. Coins bore emperors' faces, spreading political messages. Science shows consistent currency boosts economic stability. Markets, taxes, and trade thrived, connecting distant provinces. Money wasn't just value, it symbolized authority, propaganda, and civilization. Merchants relied on coins for daily life, while emperors reinforced power. Every transaction reflected economics, politics, and society, illustrating how a simple piece of metal shaped an empire and connected millions of lives. Chapter 21. Roman baths were social hubs, not just for cleaning. Citizens soaked in hot, warm, and cold pools, exercising, chatting, and relaxing. Science confirms hydrotherapy boosts circulation, reduces stress, and improves health. Bathhouses included libraries, gyms, and gardens, blending leisure with learning. Each visit was an experience of comfort, hygiene, and community. Romans turned bathing into a ritual that reinforced social bonds, health, and daily routines across the empire. Chapter 22. The Roman army used sandals called caligae, heavy-soled and studded for durability. Science shows their design improved grip, ventilation, and long-distance marching. Soldiers covered miles daily, building endurance unmatched in the ancient world. Footwear wasn't just practical, it was a tool of conquest. Every step carried discipline, training, and strategy. Proper equipment, combined with rigorous drills, allowed legions to move faster, fight stronger, and conquer territories far from Rome itself. Chapter 23. Roman aqueducts required precise surveying. Engineers used water levels and gradients, sometimes with tiny drops over miles. Science confirms their accuracy amazed even modern engineers. These channels supplied fountains, baths, and homes, enabling urban growth. Maintenance crews ensured flow and cleanliness. Water management wasn't optional, it was survival. Every arch, channel, and sluice reflected planning, physics, and problem-solving. Roman civilization thrived because they harnessed natural resources with intelligence and innovation. Chapter 24. Romans loved mosaics, decorating floors and walls with tiny colored stones. Science shows patterns required geometry, patience, and artistic vision. Scenes depicted gods, daily life, and battles, telling stories without words. Mosaics weren't just art, they reflected wealth, taste, and education. Citizens walked over history daily, surrounded by culture and beauty. Every piece contributed to narrative, symbolism, and pride. Romans blended craft, science, and storytelling to preserve culture visually and impress visitors. Chapter 25. Roman religion included augury, reading birds, flight to predict events. Science confirms humans naturally seek patterns to anticipate outcomes. Augurs influence decisions from politics to war. Observing nature gave Romans a sense of control and guidance. Birds weren't just animals, they were messengers. Every prediction shaped strategy, public policy, or ceremony. Rome combined observation, superstition, and governance, showing how humans integrate curiosity, science, and belief to navigate uncertainty. Chapter 26. Roman villas were luxurious countryside homes for elites. They had courtyards, gardens, pools, and sometimes private baths. Science shows design maximized airflow, light, and comfort. Villas weren't only retreats, they demonstrated status, wealth, and power. Art, frescoes, and architecture conveyed taste and intellect. Every room told a story of lifestyle, politics, and culture. Romans lived where beauty, utility, and prestige merged, making daily life both comfortable and a subtle display of influence. Chapter 27. The Roman alphabet evolved from Etruscan and Greek letters. Science shows writing shapes communication, memory, and society. Literacy wasn't universal, but letters spread laws, culture, and ideas. Public inscriptions announced achievements, victories, or decrees. Writing wasn't just recording, it reinforced authority and identity. Every carved stone or scroll conveyed knowledge, legacy, and governance. Rome's communication system connected cities, preserved history, and structured society, demonstrating how symbols wield power over civilization. Chapter 28. Roman roads used milestones to mark distances. Science shows consistent markers improved navigation, trade, and military strategy. Travelers, merchants, and soldiers relied on them. Roads were lifelines, connecting villages to capitals. Every stone provided orientation, safety, and information. Roads weren't just engineering, they were a communication network, enabling movement, economy, and control. Rome mastered infrastructure, using small details like milestones to maintain efficiency across vast territories. Chapter 29. Roman festivals celebrated gods, seasons, and military victories. Science shows ritualized celebrations strengthened social cohesion and memory. Citizens paraded, feasted, and performed dances, reinforcing community and hierarchy. Festivals weren't mere fun. They balanced religion, politics, and morale. Every event reflected identity, history, and authority. Romans understood that celebration, storytelling, and ritual maintained order, loyalty, and culture. Life wasn't just survival. It was shared experience and collective meaning through festivity. Chapter 30. Roman amphitheaters hosted dramatic performances. Actors wore masks, using gestures and voice to convey emotion. Science confirms visual and auditory cues improve comprehension and memory. Theater wasn't only entertainment, it educated, warned, and reflected politics. Citizens absorbed stories of morality, history, and society. Every performance was an immersive lesson, blending art, psychology, and social commentary. Romans experienced culture, learning, and reflection under the open sky, demonstrating storytelling's power to shape thought and behavior. Chapter 31. Roman concrete was revolutionary. They mixed volcanic ash, lime, and water to create structures that lasted millennia. Science shows this formula resists cracks and strengthens over time. Buildings, aqueducts, and monuments relied on this innovation. Concrete wasn't just material, it was a tool for empire building. Every wall, dome, and bridge reflected ingenuity, durability, and Roman ambition. Their knowledge of chemistry allowed architecture to endure longer than most civilizations' monuments. Chapter 32. The Roman Forum was the heart of civic life. Citizens gathered to debate, trade, and worship. Science confirms public spaces boost social interaction and cooperation. Markets bustled, statues symbolized power, and temples inspired devotion. Forums were more than buildings. They were living centers of culture, politics, and economy. Every step in the forum connected citizens to history, authority, and community, showing how architecture and design shape social behavior. Chapter 33. Roman military camps were organized with precision. Streets, gates, and barracks followed strict grids. Science shows structured layouts improve efficiency, morale, and defense. Camps became temporary cities during campaigns, enabling supply planning and coordination. Every tent, wall, and trench reflected discipline and strategy. Roman soldiers lived in order, prepared for battle, and connected to logistics. Their success wasn't luck. It was engineering, planning, and attention to detail that supported conquest. Chapter 34. Romans invented heated floors called hypocausts. Hot air circulated beneath tiles, warming rooms and baths. Science shows radiant heat distributes energy efficiently. Wealthy homes and bathhouses used this technology for comfort and hygiene. Hypocausts were more than luxury. They reflected innovation, science, and understanding of physics. Every warm floor told a story of human curiosity and engineering. Romans improved daily life through subtle inventions that combined comfort, health, and intellect. Chapter 35. Roman festivals included Saturnalia, a winter holiday of gift-giving and role reversals. Science shows ritual and celebration reduce stress and promote social cohesion. Slaves and masters swapped roles temporarily, creating humor and reflection. Citizens feasted, played games, and gave presents. Festivals weren't just fun. They reinforced community, hierarchy, and shared culture. Every celebration balanced rules and relaxation, showing Romans used psychology, tradition, and storytelling to maintain society's rhythm. Chapter 36. Roman jewelry displayed wealth and status. Rings, necklaces, and brooches used gold, gems, and intricate designs. Science shows decorative arts enhance perception of prestige and influence. Jewelry wasn't just ornament, it communicated identity, alliances, and power. Citizens observed others through style and symbols. Every piece told a personal story and reflected social norms. Romans blended aesthetics, psychology, and craftsmanship, using adornment to signal class, taste, and authority in a visually immediate way. Chapter 37. Roman roads featured drainage systems to prevent flooding. Science confirms proper water management preserves infrastructure. Engineers built channels, gutters, and slopes to keep surfaces dry. Roads were vital for trade, military, and communication. Every stone and drain reflected foresight, physics, and urban planning. Romans understood that mobility and maintenance ensured empire stability. Roads weren't just travel paths. They were carefully engineered lifelines, blending nature, science, and human ingenuity for centuries of use. Chapter 38. Roman coins carried propaganda depicting emperors, gods, or victories. Science shows visual messaging shapes memory and perception. Coins circulated across the empire, spreading political messages. Every transaction reinforced loyalty, identity, and hierarchy. Money was more than value, it was communication. Romans combined economics, art, and politics in small metal pieces. Each coin told a story of leadership, conquest, and civilization, showing how subtle design and repetition influence minds and society. Chapter 39. Roman amphitheaters had retractable awnings called velaria. Sailors controlled massive canvas covers to shade audiences. Science shows shade reduces heat stress and improves comfort. Engineering involved ropes, pulleys, and coordination. Spectators watched performances or games protected from the sun. Every velarium reflected planning, teamwork, and innovation. Romans combined entertainment, engineering, and human comfort, creating public spaces where art, sport, and science intersected seamlessly for thousands of viewers at once. Chapter 40. Romans tracked time with sundials and water clocks. Science confirms shadows and flow rates measure hours with reasonable accuracy. Citizens planned work, festivals, and politics around these instruments. Sundials weren't just practical, they symbolized knowledge, order, and civilization. Every tick marked human understanding of nature and the cosmos. Romans blended astronomy, physics, and daily life. Timekeeping allowed synchronization, efficiency, and societal structure, demonstrating early mastery of science to govern both private and public life. Chapter 41. Roman gladiators often followed strict diets to build muscle and stamina. Science shows they consumed high-carb, plant-based meals with occasional protein. Their training and nutrition created athletes with incredible endurance. Gladiators weren't just fighters, they were celebrities, inspiring fans and drawing crowds. Every meal, exercise, and match reflected discipline, strategy, and spectacle. Rome combined science, entertainment, and competition, making gladiators symbols of strength, resilience, and human ambition. Chapter 42. Roman libraries preserved knowledge from Greece, Egypt, and beyond. Scrolls covered philosophy, science, and law. Science shows early access to information accelerates learning and innovation. Citizens studied, debated, and copied texts for preservation. Libraries weren't just storage. They were hubs of culture, education, and influence. Every scroll carried wisdom, shaping thought and society. Romans valued knowledge as power, blending scholarship, architecture, and civic pride to sustain civilization for centuries. Chapter 43. Roman engineers built bridges with arches that distributed weight efficiently. Science explains the arch's stability and durability under heavy loads. Bridges connected cities, trade routes, and armies. Every stone reflected design, math, and understanding of physics. Romans didn't just cross rivers, they reshaped landscapes to expand their empire. Infrastructure wasn't convenience, it was strategy. Each bridge represented engineering mastery, problem solving, and the ability to project power across challenging terrain. Chapter 44. Roman public forums featured statues honoring gods, emperors, and heroes. Science shows visual symbols influence memory and hierarchy. Citizens walked among sculptures that reinforced social and political messages. Every figure told a story of conquest, virtue, or devotion. Art in public spaces wasn't decoration. It communicated values, history, and authority. Romans understood psychology, aesthetics, and civic identity, blending art, culture, and governance in spaces where daily life unfolded dynamically. Chapter 45. Roman aqueducts used siphons to cross valleys. Science confirms pressure and gravity moved water efficiently through pipes. Engineers measured slopes carefully to maintain flow. Aqueducts supplied urban centers, baths, and fountains, supporting hygiene and city life. Every channel reflected innovation, planning, and applied physics. Rome mastered natural forces to sustain civilization. Infrastructure wasn't luxury, it was survival and prosperity. Their expertise shows the early integration of engineering and environmental science. Chapter 46. Roman senators wore togas to signify status, wealth, and citizenship. Science shows visual cues influence perception and authority. Clothing communicated identity before words. Public appearances, speeches, and rituals relied on symbolism. Every fold, color, and accessory reflected rank, role, and influence. Romans used attire strategically to assert power, navigate politics, and maintain hierarchy. Society was structured visually and socially, blending aesthetics, psychology, and governance seamlessly. Chapter 47. Romans used glass for windows, cups, and decorative items. Science shows glassmaking requires heat, chemistry, and precision. Wealthy citizens displayed colored or blown glass as status symbols. Everyday objects reflected innovation, practicality, and artistry. Every window, vase, or cup demonstrated craftsmanship, scientific understanding, and aesthetic appreciation. Romans integrated technology, design, and culture in daily life, proving innovation wasn't just functional, it was also social and symbolic. Chapter 48. Roman soldiers used catapults and ballistae in warfare. Science confirms leverage, tension, and projectile physics made these weapons effective. Armies relied on mathematics, engineering, and strategy to conquer fortified positions. Every bolt, stone, and siege tower represented planning, precision, and technological advantage. Rome combined science, discipline, and tactics to dominate battlefields. Military success wasn't chance. It was calculated application of knowledge, logistics, and human skill. Chapter 49. Roman temples aligned with celestial events. Science shows solar and lunar patterns influenced construction and ritual timing. Temples reflected astronomy, religion, and civic life. Citizens observed sun, shadow, and stars to celebrate festivals and honor gods. Every stone and column integrated art, science, and spirituality. Romans connected human activity with the cosmos, demonstrating early understanding of astronomy's role in architecture, ritual, and societal rhythm. Chapter 50. Roman medicine included herbal remedies like willow bark, the ancient aspirin. Science confirms its pain-relieving properties. Doctors experimented with anatomy, surgery, and diet to treat illness. Health combined empirical observation and traditional knowledge. Every treatment, instrument, and technique reflected curiosity, science, and practical necessity. Romans integrated experimentation, documentation, and care. Medicine wasn't abstract, it was applied, improving survival, hygiene, and understanding of the human body across a vast empire. Chapter 51. Roman aqueducts sometimes tunneled through mountains. Engineers used surveying tools, measuring angles and gradients carefully. Science shows precise alignment kept water flowing across miles. Workers dug by hand, relying on skill, physics, and coordination. Every tunnel reflected planning, labor, and ingenuity. Aqueducts weren't just engineering, they sustained life, enabled cities, and showcased Rome's ability to conquer natural obstacles. Civilization advanced because humans learned to control water with science and strategy. Chapter 52. Roman roads featured layered construction: stones, gravel, sand, and paving. Science confirms layered design resists erosion and supports heavy loads. Roads allowed armies to march efficiently and traders to connect distant markets. Every mile reflected careful planning, physics, and urban design. Roads weren't just pathways, they were arteries of empire. Rome's attention to durability and function shows how infrastructure enabled expansion, trade, and cohesion across continents for centuries. Chapter 53. Roman baths included frigidarium, tepidarium, and caldarium rooms. Science explains heat exposure followed by cooling improves circulation and health. Citizens exercised, socialized, and relaxed in coordinated routines. Bathing wasn't mere hygiene. It reinforced community, status, and culture. Every step, dip, and conversation reflected civic life and human engineering. Romans combined architecture, physics, and social psychology to create spaces where daily routines strengthened health, identity, and societal bonds. Chapter 54. Roman amphitheaters hosted mock naval battles called naumatia. Engineers flooded arenas, designing complex water channels. Science shows understanding hydraulics and structural load was essential. Spectators watched ships, actors, and simulated combat. Events weren't only entertainment, they demonstrated power, ingenuity, and control over nature. Every spectacle reflected planning, engineering, and drama. Romans merged science, art, and politics to impress, engage, and maintain authority over citizens and allies alike. Chapter 55. Roman citizens used oil and strigil for bathing. Strigils scraped dirt, sweat, and oil, maintaining hygiene. Science confirms exfoliation promotes skin health and circulation. Bathhouses encouraged wellness, socializing, and status display. Every routine reflected care, community, and culture. Romans integrated simple tools, physical understanding, and daily habits to create cleanliness and ritual. Hygiene wasn't luxury. It was practical, social, and symbolic, reinforcing identity, health, and civic life. Chapter 56. Roman villas often had peristyles, courtyards surrounded by columns. Science shows open spaces improve ventilation and light distribution. Gardens, fountains, and sculptures combined beauty and utility. Villas reflected wealth, taste, and cultural sophistication. Every column and pathway conveyed status, aesthetics, and function. Romans merged architecture, environmental science, and design to create harmonious living spaces. Daily life was enhanced by thoughtful planning, blending comfort, visual appeal, and societal signaling in private estates. Chapter 57. Roman shields called scutum were curved, large, and protective. Science confirms curved surfaces better distribute force and absorb impact. Soldiers trained extensively to coordinate formations like the testudo. Every shield and maneuver reflected discipline, strategy, and physics. Military success depended on equipment, training, and teamwork. Rome combined scientific principles with human skill to dominate battles. Shields weren't just defense. They represented planning, protection, and tactical intelligence essential for conquest. Chapter 58. Roman forums featured basilicas for law and business. Science shows organized spaces improve workflow and communication. Citizens gathered, debated, and conducted trade efficiently. Architecture reinforced hierarchy and functionality. Every hall, column, and aisle reflected planning, civics, and commerce. Basilicas weren't just buildings. They were centers of order, culture, and authority. Romans used space to structure activity, blending practicality, aesthetics, and social organization into daily urban life. Chapter 59. Roman statues often depicted emperors in heroic poses. Science confirms visual exaggeration influences perception and memory. Sculptures projected power, virtue, and divine favor. Citizens internalized symbolism through daily exposure. Every statue told stories of leadership, conquest, and ideology. Romans mastered art and psychology to convey authority without words. Public monuments weren't decoration. They shaped perception, reinforced hierarchy, and inspired loyalty, proving the power of visual storytelling in society. Chapter 60. Roman amphitheaters used vomitoria, exits allowing thousands to leave efficiently. Science shows crowd management and flow dynamics prevent accidents and panic. Architecture incorporated planning, safety, and function. Spectators moved quickly, reducing congestion while enhancing experience. Every corridor and doorway reflected engineering, foresight, and social understanding. Romans combined science, architecture, and psychology to handle large crowds safely. Infrastructure wasn't just functional. It ensured order, comfort, and civilization's smooth operation. Chapter 61. Roman aqueducts sometimes used inverted siphons to cross valleys. Science shows pressure and gravity pushed water through pipes efficiently. Engineers calculated slopes, angles, and pipe diameters with precision. Every channel reflected knowledge, labor, and problem-solving. Aqueducts weren't just infrastructure. They supplied cities, baths, and fountains, sustaining life. Romans combined physics, engineering, and planning to control water, showing how science and strategy shaped urban growth and empire survival. Chapter 62. Roman roads often featured milestones indicating distance to Rome. Science confirms consistent markers improve navigation, trade, and military efficiency. Travelers, merchants, and soldiers relied on them daily. Every stone communicated information, direction, and authority. Roads weren't merely functional. They were arteries of the empire, connecting cities and fostering cohesion. Romans mastered planning, measurement, and communication, proving infrastructure could shape society and maintain control over vast territories for centuries. Chapter 63. Roman soldiers trained with wooden swords called rudis. Science shows repetitive practice improves strength, coordination, and technique. Training prepared them for real combat, enhancing reaction time and endurance. Every drill, march, and formation reflected discipline, strategy, and human performance. Rome's military success wasn't chance. It relied on preparation, skill, and scientific understanding of training. Soldiers combined physical conditioning with tactical knowledge to dominate battlefields across the empire efficiently and consistently. Chapter 64. Roman baths used hypnosis systems to heat floors and walls. Science confirms radiant heat improves circulation and comfort. Engineers designed furnaces and channels to distribute warmth evenly. Citizens bathed, exercised, and socialized in these controlled environments. Every tile and flue reflected understanding of physics, architecture, and lifestyle. Baths weren't just luxury. They demonstrated innovation, health awareness, and social interaction. Romans improved daily life by integrating science, engineering, and culture seamlessly into public spaces. Chapter 65. Roman amphitheaters hosted animal hunts called venations. Exotic beasts like lions, elephants, and crocodiles amazed spectators. Science shows crowd excitement triggers adrenaline and social cohesion. These events combined planning, logistics, and spectacle. Every hunt reflected power, wealth, and engineering ability to transport and control dangerous animals. Romans blended biology, entertainment, and social messaging. Public games weren't just fun. They reinforced authority, demonstrated knowledge of nature, and connected citizens through shared experience. Chapter 66. Roman law enforced property, family, and criminal regulations. Science confirms codified rules reduce disputes and improve societal stability. Citizens consulted the 12 tables and legal experts. Every decision reflected logic, precedent, and cultural norms. Law wasn't abstract, it shaped daily life, politics, and morality. Romans combined human behavior, reasoning, and structure to create a functioning society. Legal systems reinforced order, fairness, and governance, leaving a legacy that influenced civilizations for centuries. Chapter 67. Roman engineering included massive bridges with arches and concrete piers. Science shows weight distribution and materials allowed spanning rivers and valleys. Bridges connected cities, armies, and trade networks. Every arch reflected design, planning, and applied physics. Infrastructure wasn't convenience. It enabled expansion, commerce, and military movement. Romans merged architecture, science, and strategy, proving technical mastery could control landscapes, support civilization, and project power across challenging terrain efficiently and reliably. Chapter 68. Roman soldiers carried pilum, a throwing spear designed to bend on impact. Science confirms force distribution prevented enemies from reusing weapons. Each soldier trained with precision and technique. Pilum symbolized strategy, engineering, and tactical advantage. Every battle relied on preparation, discipline, and innovation. Romans integrated physics, design, and human skill to dominate warfare. Weapons weren't just tools. They reflected understanding, foresight, and the scientific application of technology in military success. Chapter 69. Roman villas featured atriums with open roofs for light and rainwater collection. Science shows natural light improves health and water management sustains daily life. Gardens, fountains, and decoration combined function with aesthetics. Every architectural choice reflected planning, status, and environmental understanding. Villas weren't only homes, they demonstrated innovation, comfort, and sophistication. Romans integrated science, art, and daily habits, showing how design enhanced lifestyle, health, and social signaling in private residences. Chapter 70. Roman currency carried images of emperors, gods, and victories. Science confirms repetition and symbolism influence memory and allegiance. Coins circulated across cities and provinces, reinforcing authority and identity. Every transaction reflected economy, politics, and propaganda. Money wasn't just value, it communicated power visually and culturally. Romans merged economics, art, and psychology to shape perception. Each coin was a miniature message of empire, leadership, and civilization, traveling in the hands of citizens daily. Chapter 71. Roman aqueducts sometimes used settling tanks to remove debris. Science shows sedimentation improves water quality and flow efficiency. Engineers designed multi-step systems with precision. Citizens relied on clean water for baths, fountains, and daily life. Every channel, tank, and sluice reflected planning, physics, and hygiene. Aqueducts weren't luxury, they sustained urban life. Romans combined observation, engineering, and science to solve practical problems and maintain a healthy, functioning empire. Chapter 72. Roman forums featured curia buildings for Senate meetings. Science confirms organized spaces improve communication and decision-making. Senators debated, passed laws, and influenced citizens. Architecture reinforced hierarchy, authority, and civic order. Every hall reflected planning, logic, and political strategy. Forums weren't just public squares. They were centers of governance, debate, and influence. Romans integrated design, social psychology, and politics to create spaces where power was visible and functional. Chapter 73. Roman soldiers wore helmets called galea, protecting heads and faces in battle. Science shows curved designs deflect impact and reduce injury. Helmets included cheek guards and decorative crests. Every piece reflected engineering, craftsmanship, and tactical awareness. Military success depended on equipment, training, and coordination. Romans applied physics, materials science, and design to maximize survival. Helmets weren't just protection. They symbolized discipline, status, and the combination of technology and human skill in warfare. Chapter 74. Roman villas often included triclinium dining rooms. Science confirms seating arrangement influences conversation and social dynamics. Citizens reclined on couches while enjoying multiple courses. Meals were social, political, and cultural events. Every plate, arrangement, and decoration reflected status, taste, and planning. Dining wasn't just nourishment, it conveyed identity, alliances, and influence. Romans blended culture, psychology, and luxury to create experiences reinforcing social hierarchy and personal prestige in daily life. Chapter 75. Roman soldiers trained in formations like the testudo or tortoise. Science shows overlapping shields distribute force and protect against projectiles. Drills required precision, coordination, and endurance. Every movement reflected discipline, strategy, and teamwork. Rome's military strength relied on preparation, engineering, and understanding human performance. Formations weren't just defense. They represented planning, innovation, and control over chaos. Soldiers became an extension of science and organization, turning human skill into a powerful weapon. Chapter 76. Roman baths used natural hot springs when available. Science shows minerals in water improve skin and circulation. Citizens bathed, socialized, and exercised in controlled environments. Baths combined hygiene, leisure, and health. Every pool, furnace, and channel reflected engineering, science, and culture. Romans understood wellness as both physical and social. Bathhouses weren't only practical, they were centers of communal life, reinforcing health, identity, and interaction in urban society. Chapter 77. Roman roads crossed bridges, tunnels, and causeways. Science confirms proper grading, drainage, and materials improve durability. Engineers measured slopes and reinforced weak points. Every mile reflected planning, physics, and logistics. Roads enabled armies, trade, and communication across vast distances. Infrastructure wasn't just convenience, it was strategic. Romans integrated engineering, science, and administration to maintain control, connect cities, and sustain the empire's expansion efficiently and reliably. Chapter 78. Roman aqueducts used arches to support channels over valleys. Science shows arches distribute weight efficiently. Engineers combined materials, gravity, and geometry to maintain water flow. Every arch reflected problem-solving, precision, and planning. Aqueducts supplied millions, sustaining urban life. Romans merged engineering, science, and environmental understanding to control natural resources. Infrastructure wasn't optional. It was essential for civilization, showing how mastery of physics and design enabled empire-scale projects. Chapter 79. Roman coins sometimes contained silver or gold, indicating value. Science confirms metal content influences durability, perception, and economy. Coins traveled widely, spreading authority and messages. Every minting reflected economics, politics, and craftsmanship. Currency wasn't just trade, it communicated power and identity. Romans combined metallurgy, symbolism, and psychology to reinforce allegiance and influence perception. Money was both tool and message, shaping society and governance across vast territories. Chapter 80. Roman amphitheaters had complex seating for social hierarchy. Science confirms structured layout improves crowd management and visibility. Citizens observed performances according to status, reinforcing order. Every row, entrance, and division reflected planning, sociology, and architecture. Seating wasn't arbitrary. It represented class, control, and organization. Romans combined design, psychology, and civic structure to manage thousands effectively. Public spaces became arenas of both entertainment and social signaling, reflecting structured urban life. Chapter 81. Roman aqueducts sometimes used lead pipes to distribute water. Science shows lead is toxic, but Romans didn't fully understand its effects. Despite this, plumbing enabled baths, fountains, and homes. Engineers calculated gradients and flow for efficiency. Every pipe reflected planning, physics, and infrastructure. Aqueducts weren't just convenience, they were essential for urban life. Romans combined technology, engineering, and ingenuity to supply cities, even when science hadn't yet revealed all consequences. Chapter 82. Roman soldiers carried gladii, short swords designed for stabbing in close combat. Science confirms short weapons maximize control, speed, and lethality in tight formations. Training emphasized precision, endurance, and coordination. Every swing, thrust, and maneuver reflected discipline and tactical science. Weapons weren't just tools. They represented engineering, strategy, and applied human skill. Rome's military mastery combined technology, practice, and psychology to dominate opponents on battlefields across the empire efficiently. Chapter 83. Roman villas often included frescoes on walls depicting gods, nature, and daily life. Science shows color and imagery influence mood and perception. Wealthy citizens used art to convey taste, culture, and status. Every painting reflected skill, planning, and storytelling. Frescoes weren't mere decoration. They preserved stories, history, and identity. Romans merged aesthetics, psychology, and communication to make private spaces both beautiful and meaningful, blending culture, function, and visual narrative seamlessly. Chapter 84. Roman theaters included orchestra spaces for performances. Science confirms proximity improves acoustics and audience engagement. Actors, musicians, and speakers relied on design to project voice and sound. Every architectural choice reflected planning, physics, and social organization. Theaters weren't just entertainment. They educated, inspired, and united citizens. Romans combined engineering, art, and psychology to create immersive experiences, showing how science and design enhanced culture, communication, and community in public spaces. Chapter 85. Roman military helmets often had plumes or crests. Science shows visual height increases visibility and intimidation. Soldiers projected status, rank, and presence. Every decoration reflected psychology, strategy, and identity. Helmets weren't just protection. They communicated power and authority on the battlefield. Romans understood human perception and behavior, integrating design, materials, and symbolism to reinforce hierarchy and morale. Military equipment blended science, strategy, and social signaling seamlessly. Chapter 86. Roman baths sometimes included cold plunge pools for health. Science confirms rapid temperature changes improve circulation and recovery. Citizens followed structured bathing routines for hygiene, exercise, and socialization. Every pool and chamber reflected engineering, physics, and culture. Baths weren't just leisure. They strengthened community, status, and wellness. Romans integrated simple science with daily habits, demonstrating understanding of human physiology, social behavior, and environmental control in public spaces. Chapter 87. Roman forums contained markets where goods from across the empire circulated. Science shows organized trade systems improve economy, distribution, and urban growth. Merchants relied on infrastructure, law, and measurement standards. Every stall, pathway, and transaction reflected planning, commerce, and social interaction. Markets weren't merely trade. They connected communities, facilitated governance, and reinforced economic stability. Romans combined infrastructure, regulation, and social science to sustain thriving urban life. Chapter 88. Roman roads used milestones with engraved distances. Science confirms visual markers improve orientation, planning, and efficiency. Travelers, armies, and traders depended on them to navigate thousands of miles. Every stone represented communication, logistics, and control. Roads weren't just travel paths. They were strategic networks enabling administration, commerce, and military movement. Romans combined measurement, engineering, and planning to maintain cohesion and efficiency across vast territories. Chapter 89. Roman temples were decorated with sculptures of gods and mythological scenes. Science confirms visual storytelling improves memory and comprehension. Citizens internalized culture, religion, and morals through imagery. Every statue, relief, and carving reflected craftsmanship, planning, and narrative skill. Temples weren't just religious spaces. They educated, inspired, and reinforced social norms. Romans blended art, psychology, and spirituality to make sacred spaces meaningful, informative, and culturally central to urban life. Chapter 90. Roman coins sometimes depicted victories or conquered territories. Science shows repeated imagery influences memory and loyalty. Citizens encountered coins daily, internalizing messages of power and achievement. Every minting reflected propaganda, economics, and art. Currency wasn't merely money. It reinforced authority and identity. Romans combined metallurgy, design, and psychology to communicate empire-wide, showing that even small objects could carry cultural, political, and economic significance across society. Chapter 91. Roman aqueducts sometimes used settling basins to remove sediment. Science shows sedimentation prevents blockages and improves water quality. Engineers designed multi-stage systems for efficiency and durability. Citizens relied on clean water for baths, fountains, and homes. Every channel, basin, and sluice reflected engineering, planning, and hygiene. Aqueducts weren't optional. They sustained cities and daily life. Romans combined observation, physics, and technology to manage resources and maintain a thriving empire. Chapter 92. Roman soldiers used pila, javelins designed to bend on impact. Science confirms deformation prevents enemies from reusing weapons. Training emphasized accuracy, strength, and coordination. Every throw reflected preparation, discipline, and applied physics. Military success relied on both skill and technology. Weapons weren't just tools. They were engineered to maximize tactical advantage. Romans merged design, science, and human ability to create effective strategies that dominated battlefields across the empire. Chapter 93. Roman villas often had atriums with open roofs to collect rainwater. Science shows natural light improves well-being, and collected water supports daily life. Gardens, fountains, and decoration combined function and beauty. Every architectural choice reflected planning, status, and environmental understanding. Villas weren't only homes, they demonstrated engineering, comfort, and sophistication. Romans integrated science, art, and lifestyle to create spaces where utility, aesthetics, and social signaling blended seamlessly. Chapter 94. Roman baths included frigidarium, tepidarium, and caldarium rooms. Science confirms temperature variation improves circulation and health. Citizens exercised, socialized, and relaxed in structured routines. Every bath, channel, and chamber reflected engineering, hygiene, and culture. Baths weren't mere luxury. They strengthened health, community, and social status. Romans applied knowledge of human physiology, architecture, and social behavior to create spaces that balanced comfort, wellness, and interaction efficiently. Chapter 95. Roman amphitheaters staged animal hunts called venations. Exotic animals like lions, elephants, and bears thrilled spectators. Science shows excitement triggers adrenaline and social cohesion. Planning, logistics, and crowd control were essential. Every hunt reflected power, wealth, and engineering skill to transport and manage animals safely. Public games weren't just entertainment. They communicated authority, demonstrated control over nature, and connected citizens through shared spectacle, reinforcing Rome's social structure and culture. Chapter 96. Roman law codified rules for property, family, and crime. Science confirms codified systems reduce conflict and increase stability. Citizens reference the 12 tables and legal experts regularly. Every ruling reflected logic, precedent, and societal norms. Law wasn't abstract. It shaped everyday life, politics, and ethics. Romans combined observation, reasoning, and governance to create functional society. Legal systems reinforced order, fairness, and civilization, leaving a legacy that influenced legal frameworks for centuries. Chapter 97. Roman engineers built bridges with arches to span rivers and valleys. Science confirms arches distribute weight efficiently, supporting massive loads. Bridges connected cities, trade routes, and armies. Every structure reflected planning, materials science, and engineering skill. Infrastructure wasn't just functional. It enabled empire expansion, commerce, and military mobility. Romans combined mathematics, physics, and practical design to control landscapes and maintain cohesion, demonstrating mastery over both nature and human activity. Chapter 98. Roman soldiers carried gladii, short swords designed for stabbing in close combat. Science confirms short weapons maximize control, speed, and effectiveness in formations. Training emphasized endurance, technique, and coordination. Every swing reflected preparation, discipline, and applied physics. Weapons weren't mere tools. They represented engineering, tactical planning, and human skill. Rome's military success relied on integrating technology, training, and science to dominate opponents consistently across diverse battlefields. Chapter 99. Roman villas featured frescoes showing gods, daily life, and nature. Science shows imagery affects mood, memory, and perception. Wealthy citizens used art to express taste, identity, and social status. Every painting reflected craftsmanship, planning, and narrative skill. Frescoes weren't decoration. They preserved stories and culture. Romans blended aesthetics, psychology, and communication to create meaningful private spaces. Art reinforced culture, personal identity, and sophistication, demonstrating the integration of science and storytelling in everyday life. Chapter 100. Roman coins carried images of emperors, victories, and gods. Science confirms repeated symbols influence memory and loyalty. Citizens saw coins daily, absorbing messages of power and achievement. Every minting reflected economics, politics, and artistry. Currency wasn't just money. It reinforced authority, identity, and culture. Romans merged metallurgy, symbolism, and psychology to communicate empire-wide. Even small objects carried social, political, and economic significance, shaping perception, allegiance, and civilization across the empire. That's 100 amazing facts about ancient Rome. From epic feats to daily life, we've seen how innovation, strategy, and culture created an empire that still inspires us today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating history.